the powerful old ladies of the Imperial fleet, Grand Cruisers. Welcome, gentle listener. I am Baldermort, your faithful servant, and I wish to introduce you to the forces, factions, and faces of the Warhammer 40k setting, the grim darkness of the far future, where there is no time for peace, there is only time for war. If you wish to see the channel flourish and possibly take on bigger topics and get better resources, then like and subscribe. But also consider joining our Patreon or throwing a one-off tip in the form of a super thanks, if indeed I've earned your bounty. And today, we shall be taking a look into some of the oldest yet most potent ships in the Navis Imperialis, the Grand Cruisers of the Imperial Navy. Despite venerable age, they are so advanced that they are seen as the bane of captains and admirals alike, for a plethora of reasons I shall elucidate as we progress. As usual, the format to this video will be simple: a tale to set the mood, then the cold hard lore of the topic. So, let us begin. From the Bold Library. No, we walk down the hill. The darkness of the void was torn asunder as a multispectral gash ripped across real space, and out of the Mandeville Point rushed a flock of ships. Raiders. They powered towards the fifth planet, but that was not their destination, not even close. A dozen escort classes with a meaty central ship, a heavy cruiser equivalent at least in Imperial tonnage. Their ships may have been human, but the adornments that festooned the vessels were garish, grisly, and spiky. Images that could shatter or twist the mind should they be witnessed up close and in detail. Before them was a convoy of merchantmen, limping away from the planet at the best speed their engines could muster. Between the raiders and their prize sat a large but ancient ship of the line. The raiders accelerated to combat speed and drove straight for the single shepherd, salivating at the chance for a very one-sided battle before they moved on to the main course. The convoy would be packed with goods, important supplies, and, of course, slaves. The old hunk of scrap between them would be no challenge at all. Aboard the antiquated ship, the bridge was not as any would expect. Each member of the crew was not shaking, nor making the sign of the Aquila to ward off certain doom. To a man, they wore wolfish grins as their hands paused, hovering over consoles. They all waited for the order. Some flicked looks over their shoulders to see, to relish the moment. And they were not disappointed with the sights and sounds as Lord Perseus bantered with his seneschal, Benchal the 36th. "Might I suggest we raise void shields and prepare for the arrival of our guests, my Lord Thorman?" "Let's not be hasty, Benchal. Why would we want to turn on the lights so fast when our birthday boys have not even entered the room?" scoffed the rogue trader admiral. "The distance is closing, and perhaps you have forgotten the last time we relied on the old girl a little bit too much. She isn't as nippy as she once was, my Lord Thorman. And we are sitting and standing here talking about it. So we got through the encounter, eh, Benchal? The Mercurial still has it where it counts, don't you, girl?" crooned Perseus, as he stroked the arm of his chair like a lover. The tall man standing beside him rolled his one human eye to the ceiling as he then snapped a look at the comms officer, who half-turned and nodded to him in confirmation. Benchal then reported, "They have fired a fusillade of torpedoes, coming in fast." "Clock, Benchal." "Ugh. Oh, go on then. Raise the void shields. Bring us into them. Full speed ahead." The seneschal then barked out a dozen orders to individuals across the bridge. each reacting like greyhounds with a barrier suddenly down. Their hands danced across screens and controls, and within a startlingly fast time, the Mercurial leapt towards the oncoming raiders, heading right down their throats. The escorts scattered to surround the Grand Cruiser as it ploughed towards its main adversary, the heavy ship in their midst. The shields flickered into life just in time to stop the first salvo of torpedoes. The taller man tutted as he looked down at the captain, who had a grin as wide as a Grox's plastered across his face. Perseus waggled his eyebrows up at Benchal. "Do we have permission to return fire, Lord?" "Not yet, Benchal, not yet. We have to draw them in even closer. If they play Eldar and duck out on us, we may never get another chance to bag them all." Perseus sat back in his chair and slowly smoothed his beard and twisted the ends of his moustache as his grin became even wider at the huff from his XO. But all around him knew he was right. Perseus was always right, despite how Benchal chivied him remorselessly. More torpedoes slammed into the void shields, and then the heavy cruiser at the enemy's heart opened up. Macro cannons and lance rays crashed into the Mercurial's forward shielding. But, unbelievably to the raiders, they did not collapse. The raider escort was now peeling around the sides of the old ship, lining up to give their best shot to her side armor and shielding. Perseus raised a finger, and the seneschal bent forward and hovered, lips quivering to bark out the order. A moment that Lord Thorman dragged out until all could see the visible rage erupt in the face of the seneschal. Finally, he dropped the finger and said the one word. "Now!" Benchal practically screamed the order. "All banks fore, port and starboard, fire! Damn you, fire!" And the Mercurial's huge broadsides crashed out into the void, tearing the passing raider escorts to pieces. One ship was cut clean in half, others just exploded as their void shields imploded under an orchestra of macro cannon shots that then tore straight through their armor. All the darkness was lit by this firework display. Perseus then gave a simple hand gesture, and Benchal barked the orders. The old Grand Cruiser then slowed and swung about to give its side silhouette to the oncoming heavy central ship. And then she unloaded a potent directed broadside right into the raider's prow before putting on a tiny burst of speed to get out of the way of the burning Hawk. As it passed, the Mercurial fired twice more, destroying the last of the escorts and making absolutely certain that the cruiser was nothing but a wreck. Lord Perseus Thorman stroked the arm of his chair again as he crooned. "Good girl. Let's see if these scum have anything to make you feel young again." He then stood and turned to his seneschal. "Begin scrapping operations as soon as you have confirmed no more life signs out there." Ah, Grand Cruisers, how I love thee! For they show the very state of the Imperium and how it has devolved. The Grand Cruisers were constructed during the early stages of the Great Crusade and are incredibly powerful compared to the heavy and battle cruisers of the modern era. They are truly battle cruisers in all but name, usually around 7 kilometers long and nearly 2 wide, and they have a crew complement of circa 140,000, give or take a few. So they are more like a floating citadel in the void. During the Great Crusade, the Gloriana battleships led the main expeditionary fleets, under the command of a Primarch, of course. But the Grand Cruisers were designated to be the central flagships of a battle fleet. Now this was important, as a crusade was so swift. If they only went out in main thrusts surrounding the Primarchs and their Glorianas, then they would not have conquered so quickly. As each human colony world was brought back into Imperial compliance, their warlords and leaders were often given the new role of becoming a rogue trader. They would be granted a ship or small flotilla and told to go out into the void before the bow wave of the crusade proper. This practice neutralized the old leadership of any world from becoming a core around which rebellion could foment, but also it empowered driven and capable men and women into acting on behalf of the Imperium. In this way, they acted as scouts and first contact experts, meeting and greeting old human colonies and identifying where Xenos strongholds and pocket empires existed. They evaluated the threats and most important strongholds that required the full force of an expeditionary fleet's attention. But there were few systems or worlds that required that level of force. Many worlds could be taken or freed with much less resources. Splinter fleets and flotillas could be sent out to dominate or destroy these lesser worlds, and at their core was often a grand cruiser. Most were tough, even for the time, heavily protected by overlapping void shield arrays, and packed a punch that would make a battleship wary of coming in too close. Their output of firepower was far more devastating than their size might reflect. The Grand Cruiser was to take the fore in any large-scale engagement and tear enemy capital ships apart with heavy broadsides. Its armor was thicker than any other vessels of comparable size. Truly, the Grand Cruiser was a scrapper that could lay waste to entire battle groups of smaller enemy ships. They were some of the most advanced vessels of their time, and this has been the issue with them in the modern era. The Dagon, Dominus and Inflexible classes have little knowledge remaining about them, and are mostly inoperable in the era Indomitus. The Carinus is now better known as the Repulsive class, as so many of them are now only operated by the forces of the Traitor Marines. The Avenger, Exorcist and Vengeance classes are the most often seen. Yet this is also most likely to be among the fleets of the Chaos Traitors, although of course some are still active in the Imperium. But why is such a useful naval asset now in such ill repute? Simple. They are too advanced. As a Horus heresy went on, the amount of forge worlds, manufactorums and advanced colonies of the Imperium were scoured bare, their cities flattened, their populations slaughtered, and their knowledge lost. Add this to the general retrograde in technological expertise within the Imperium over the last 10,000 years or more, and you have a recipe for disaster. The advanced drives, weapon systems and shields of the Grand Cruisers are now beyond the wit and ability of most adepts of Mars, and when something so technical and powerful is not maintained, it has a nasty potential to explode. So many in the Navis Imperialis look at these ships as hangovers from a bygone age, the kind of weapon they would all wish to be able to use, but a colossal blade with two edges. If the flagship of a flotilla or battle group malfunctions mid-battle, the entire engagement may turn into a massacre, something the localized sector fleet simply cannot afford. Worse still, what if the admiral of a mini-fleet is lost due to an unpredictable malfunction that annihilates his ship? Right in the middle of the formation? It could, in the one blast, cripple or sink scores of escorts, tear lighter cruisers around it to scrap. They are also, by sheer dint of their complexity, intensely costly to maintain in full fighting fettle. When the Imperium is so beset and every last ship is needed, and these are difficult in the extreme to repair or replace, these sorts of risks cannot be matched against the reward of their firepower and sturdiness in the line of battle. The crying shame is that many a Grand Cruiser is floating empty and unpowered in the many sector reserve fleets, mothballed by being placed in open void, surrounded by others of its generation, or designs that no longer match the requirements of the modern fleets. There are some of these tough old girls amongst second-line fleets, and they act as tigers among sheep, relegated to patrol and emplacement duties, yet able to radically punish any who they come across. It must be the terror of any pirate admiral to see a lone old vessel shepherding a flock of transports or trade vessels, as my story tried to elucidate, only to close with them and find out that their mistake has been final. These old ladies can still scrap with the best of them, and can gut a pirate raiding fleet with ease. Yet, even so, there is one faction in which they stand in good favour, and that is amongst the rogue trader dynasties. Because they have so few ships under their command, perhaps even only the one, then the chance of haggling with the Navy for a grand cruiser is far more likely. And of course, if you only have one ship, then you are far more likely to look after that old girl and give her everything she needs to fly true. Again, when a single ship appears above a planet and offers to trade, it is only a fool that repudiates such a polite offer. The grand cruisers were designed for open warfare, of course, but also for planetary suppression. They can unload the kind of firepower that scours vast swathes of a planet until the point has been made by its rogue trader captain. And if you are to go where angels fear to tread, to roam outside the usual flight paths of the Imperium and its navy, or even worse, to go beyond the light of the Astronomicon, then surely there can be no substitute for a grand cruiser. I have been Baldermort, your faithful servant. Like and subscribe, tip if I have earned your bounty, and do check out the video description for other entertainment opportunities. But most importantly of all, no matter what you do today, do try to make some time for fun. Toodaloo.